300k, 300k, or we take it to Sky, alright? Hey there folks, how's it going? Well, I have been racking my brains for what useful content I can provide the retro gaming community here on YouTube. And to be honest with you, there are precious few topics that haven't already been covered. And if you're anything like me, sometimes just seeing the same old stuff gets a bit boring, doesn't it? So I thought about, well, I live in Japan. I've lived here now for nearly 3 years, believe it or not. So what can I offer? Now, I do a monthly or thereabouts pick-up video. Actually, the most recent one of those is coming very soon. I thought about it, and I thought, a lot of things usually end up being about, look at all this stuff I bought. Look how much cheaper it is here compared to what you might be paying where you live. And I don't know, sometimes that doesn't quite sit very well with me. It feels a little bit like bragging or trying a bit too hard. So, bringing things back down to earth, I thought about, well, what if maybe some of you want to come to Japan? Maybe you're going to come for a holiday, an extended vacation, a business trip, or maybe like me, you want to come here to live and work, and you know, you might want to do a bit of video game shopping, retro game shopping, that kind of thing when you come here. So it's helpful to know a little bit of the lingo, shall we say, to get you started. And just before we get stuck into it, I'm also going to share some of my top bargains that I have found since I came to Japan. I've got 6 of them, in fact, so hopefully that will add a bit of variety to things. But honestly, just before we get started, I want to give you a little bit of encouragement. So I came to Japan to live and work 3 years ago almost now, and despite having taken a 20-week or 20-evening night class in Japanese, which was very basic stuff, but a good grounding, I came here basically being only able to utter sorry, hello, and thank you, like, you know, like gomenasai, sorry, hello, konnichiwa, arigatou gozaimasu, thank you, kind of thing. And I live in a very rural part of Japan, a prefecture called Iwate. It's Japan's second biggest prefecture after Hokkaido. And so it is very rare that you encounter somebody who speaks English here. So most of my day-to-day conversation has been in Japanese. And so whilst I have a very long way to go with my Japanese, there is a lot more for me to learn, a lot more for me to study, a lot more for me to improve. I feel reasonably confident about giving you this advice now, because I found that it has worked really well for me when I've gone shopping. And I think that if anybody's got any comments about things that they want to correct me on, just put them down in the comments down below, or anything that you think, oh, actually, it's better if you say this. Please put it down there. I'm still very much a student. I'm always open to learning. I am not the final word in this subject. You know, I'm just a learner, basically. But after 3 years of being here, I'm now fairly confident to try and give out this advice. So, without further ado, I want to get started. So, let's start with some basic words that are used for various things to do with retro gaming. Now, if you go into the video description, you'll see a link to my Patreon. I have put together a hint sheet, which is going to be all the things that I cover in this series of videos, in which you can fold up into a little square, put it into your pocket and take with you when you come to Japan. So you won't have to remember all of the phrases. But I would recommend practicing those phrases. I'll include the actual word itself, how to read it, just spelt out in alphabetical Roman alphabet letters, and its meaning, so you don't have to necessarily remember everything. And that's on my Patreon, which you can subscribe to from $2 a month. Higher tiers are available where you get artwork and other perks and so forth. Otherwise, if you just want to do a one-off, you can go to Coffee. There's a link in the video description. Just ask for the hint sheet and I'll more than happily send it to you. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get started. So I have my list here. So there's 2 things that I want to cover. I want to cover components, which like buhin, or actual products themselves, okay, shinamono. And I want to cover the condition of things, okay, so that's the jotai, or sometimes you might see guai, but yeah, generally you're going to see jotai for condition, because that becomes quite important. So let's start with the basics. you'll be glad to know that a lot of the words that we're going to go through in this section of the video are derived from English. They might have slightly different pronunciation, but if you're reasonably close, you should be understood. So, let's start with game. Game. No surprises what that means. That means game. Now, that can mean all sorts of games. That can mean things like board games. It can mean modern video games. It can mean retro video games. It's a bit of a catch-all phrase. So, game. On from that, you might start to encounter this phrase, terebi game, and that basically just means TV game, so a game that's plugged into a TV. And terebi is like a Japaneseification, that's not a word, of TV, television, an English word, okay? So terebi game, so you might see that quite often on websites actually. For example, if you go onto Suragaya's website in Japan, you'll see it listed as terebi game, okay? More specifically, you might see retro game, and that means retro game, obviously. So you may see that as well. So those are some very straightforward phrases that you might want to look for when you're looking outside of a store. And that cheat sheet also has the katakana that is written, so you can match it up if your katakana and Japanese in general reading skills are not too hot. Okay, next. Cassetto. It's not a cartridge, okay? It's cassetto. And I think that comes from a very early Japanese games console called the Epoch Cassette Vision. So I think on that system they were called cassetto. So they're not cartridges. So just be aware of that, okay? So cassetto. And in fact you can see it on the back here. Cassetto ni suite onigai, okay? So yes, that's a cassetto. Okay, nice easy one. CD. Okay, so that's just basically the Japanese pronunciation for CD. Okay, CD. Okay, what about this? Sotohako. Okay, so outer box. Okay, sotohako. And if you want to know about the inside of the box, nakahako. Okay, so this is the inner box, essentially, on a Super Famicom game. This is an outer box. Sotohako. Soto means outside, naka means inside, or to some extent inner, okay? What about the contents of the box, okay? What's in the box? Okay, so the instructions. Setsumeisho. Sometimes it might actually be called the asobikata. Okay? So, but yes, setsumeisho. What about these little bits? To be honest with you, I'm not 100% what the best word to use is. I mean, technically, this is a bit like a postcard, isn't it? So, this is technically a hagaki. But really, I would suggest that you call these shirashi. Those mean leaflets, okay? So I would call that shirashi. And what about the game itself? Well, we said cassetto, but you will also see game softo, okay? Or sometimes just softo. So you have cassetto, game softo. Okay, so you might see all three of those, or a variation on the theme. Hosho, that means warranty, okay, guarantee. So that's useful to be able to spot. Next, you might want to ask whether the system comes with any AV cables to connect to a TV. Well, you'll be glad to know that the way that we say that is AV cable, okay? So it's the same thing, just with slightly different pronunciation. But if you say AV cable, they'll understand. And what about the power adapter? The brick that plugs into the wall or similar. AC adapter. Okay? So the C gets pronounced as she. Okay? AC adapter. But if you say AC adapter, chances are you will be understood. Okay? And what about the main body of something? So this would be, say for example, the actual unit itself. So let's take this Game Boy Color for example. What do we call the overall thing? Hontai. Hontai. So that's the main body, the main unit, okay? Hontai. So now let's move on to words to do with condition of items. You know, what condition are they in, okay? So condition in Japanese, in this instance, is generally jotai. Jotai, okay? Sometimes you might even see guai, but jotai is what you're most commonly going to see when it comes to condition. So, for example, we have dameji, dameji. So that literally means damage, okay? Now, it will usually say where the damage is. It might say to do with the box, hakko, or it might say to do with the CD, okay? Or it may be to do with the instructions, the manual, setsumeisho, ne? So, what about scratches? What about scratches on a disc? Or maybe cracks in the jewel case? Or maybe there is damage to the manual and it's got rips and tears and things like that. Well, generally you'll see the word kizu, kizu. There are other words, but most commonly I've seen kizu, okay? So that means scratches, cracks, fractures, this kind of stuff, okay? So what about the colour of something, you know, like when things yellow or fade and that kind of stuff? Henshoku, henshoku. When something's yellowed or faded or got some kind of discoloration to the object. So that goes through some of the easy words that you'll need to know when you're perhaps asking about items in shops, when you're looking at details like, well, where is it in this store? You'll see perhaps some of these words, but also we can combine those with the phrases that I'm going to teach you in this set of videos. So let's move on to one of my bargains. So one of the things that you may already do if you don't live in Japan is use Yahoo auctions through like a proxy bidding site, and then using a shipping merchant you perhaps may be able to get things here from Japan. But if you actually come to Japan, you'll have free unfettered access to the website. And that's exactly what I had when I came here, and I immediately started looking for a couple of items. One of them was a Super Famicom game, Area 88, which is otherwise known as UN Squadron. Great little shoot 'em up from Capcom. And also a little handheld system, and one that I have loved for the longest time. It's the Game Boy Pocket. Now, since I bought this, I have modified it with a new shell and a new screen. Okay, so it's now got a backlit screen. Oh no. I'm not going to play golf, am I? Just one hole, just one hole. Fight! Oh. 391 yards out. Ooh. 惜しい. No! Yeah! Bogey. Sorry. So I love the Game Boy Pocket, and even as somebody who doesn't like golf in real life, I actually love playing golf on the Game Boy for some reason, but I don't want to get too distracted. So this originally came in a fair condition, I would say. It was a yellow Game Boy Pocket, but otherwise it was standard. And so it also came with a Game Boy camera, green for some reason. I'm not sure why. Maybe just somebody had assembled a bunch of stuff and thought, sell that. I can't imagine that they would have chosen a green camera to go with a yellow Game Boy, but maybe they did. And it also came with some games. I remember it coming with 3 of the Pokemon games, blue, green and yellow, the Pikachu Special Edition, Mole Mania and a Sailor Moon beat-em-up game. So it was quite a nice little package. So this was all on Yahoo auctions, and how much did I pay for this? 1,600 yen or thereabouts. I mean, that is just such a good deal. Now, admittedly, I've spent a little bit more money on it since then by putting in the backlit screen and a new case with new buttons. But I basically play this, well, if not every day, most days of the week. I just love the Game Boy. It really is fantastic. So, yeah, with using some of these phrases, you can actually type these into Yahoo auctions and start looking for things. So, there you go. Bargain number 1. Okay, another really helpful tip that I'm going to give you about looking around retro video game stores and the likes is about how things are organised. Now, they'll usually be organised by the system that the game is for, obviously, and that's usually fairly straightforward. In fact, most of the times I find that the names are actually written in English on the, is it called the SEL? I'm trying to remember my days of working in supermarkets, but you'll usually see it written just using sort of alphabetical letters. But beyond that is how do they order the actual games. Now, if they have been ordered, they won't use A, B, C, D, E, F. And the funny thing is that when I first came to Japan, I stayed in Nerima-ku, Nerima Ward, and I remember the first evening that I went to a book-off store, and I was so excited because I had obviously never done this before, and I was so eager to look at all the manga and everything they had and the games, and then the penny drops. It's just like, well, of course, this isn't going to be ordered by A, B, C, D, E because that's not Japan's native writing system. So you need to have a little bit of knowledge of how the Japanese alphabet, I use that very loosely, that word, is organised. So some familiarity with hiragana and katakana's order is really helpful. And this is something called the Goju Onjun. That's basically the A, I, U, E, O, A, I, U, E, O ordering system, and that's how it follows. So if you know hiragana or katakana, you'll know that it goes A, I, U, E, O, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, and so on and so forth, okay? Sa, shi, su, se, to, okay? So, not to. Fluent me, I'm just so fluent. So it will help you. So, for example, you're looking for Aladdin, okay? Say you're looking for it on a Super Famicom, so you need to look in A, so right at the very beginning, because it will be under Aladdin, okay? So, da-na-na-na, so it'll be right at the very beginning, because that's how the Japanese writing system is sequenced, so it'll be right at the very beginning of all the aisles or the racks that they have for the games. How about Rockman X2? Okay, Rockman X2 is going to be towards the end of that system's shelves or aisles or whatever kind of thing, because Ro appears towards the end of the Goju Onjun system, okay? So what about something like Batman Returns? Batman Returns. So for those of you familiar with the Goju Onjun, okay, you know about Ha, Hi, Fu, He, Ho, because you also get Babi Bubebo, Papi Pupepo, okay? So it gets Rendaku, doesn't it? So you don't just have Ha, you also have Ba and Pa. So in this case, Batman Returns is going to be under Ha, okay? They don't tend to separate out Ha, Ba and Pa, okay? So if you're looking for something that begins with Ba, or what about Parodius? That's another good one. Parodius, that will be underneath Ha, okay? So top tip there. So some familiarity with the Japanese writing systems will help you there. Of course, obviously, game titles are not just written in hiragana and katakana. If the game title happens to be kanji, and I will get onto that shortly because I don't want to spoil what I'm going to show you as my second bargain, it will also be ordered under that Goju Onjun system, okay? But obviously, you'll have to be able to read the kanji to be able to spot it. But anyway, more on that in a little bit. So, some key phrases that we can use to get help in a game store. So, I am going to cover other topics, but I just want to start off relatively gently. So, one of the things that you might want to do is get an assistant or a shopkeeper's attention, okay? So, this will be somebody called a tenin-san generally, okay? And all you've got to say is, sumimasen, sumimasen. It's very simple. You're not going to offend anybody by saying that. They will understand immediately, and you can just, if you really want to be super polite when they come over, you can just say "Onigai shimasu," like "please help me" kind of thing. But you don't need to say that. You just need to sumimasen, sumimasen, and that will work everywhere. In fact, restaurants a lot. Okay, not just stores. Okay. So you've said sumimasen, excuse me. What can you say next? Well, maybe you want to say, "I have a question. I have a question." And I find the best way to say this is, ちょっと質問があります. ちょっと質問があります. Okay, so it basically is a very soft way of saying, oh, I just have a question kind of thing. I just have a little question to ask, okay? So you can just say, shitsumon ga arimasu. That's like, I have a question. So, what about if you want to ask if the store has something? Maybe you've tried looking for it and you can't find it, or you're just being lazy. So what can you say? Well, let's take Aladdin as an example, okay? You can literally go up to the storekeeper or an assistant and say, Sumimasen, chotto shitsumon ga arimasu. Aladdin ga arimasu ka? Aladdin ga arimasu ka? So it literally means, do you have Aladdin? Do you have Aladdin? Okay, so the ga arimasu ka is do you have? So XYZ ga arimasu ka? Do you have? But you may want to be a bit more specific. Like, for example, you don't want Aladdin for the Game Boy. Not that I think it, or maybe it does exist, I don't know. You don't want Aladdin for the Mega Drive, but you want it for the Super Famicom. So what do we say? Super Famicom no Aladdin ga arimasu ka? Super Famicom no Aladdin ga arimasu ka? Do you have Aladdin for the Super Famicom? Maybe you want it for the Mega Drive. Mega Drive no Aladdin ga arimasu ka? Mega Drive no Aladdin ga arimasu ka? Do you have Aladdin for the Mega Drive? That's about it, really. So, if you're looking for something that is very system specific, they could just type it in. So, or maybe you would say Aladdin ga arimasu ka? And they'll be like, oh, chotto kakunin o shite. I just need to check. Or checko shimasu. I just need to check. And then they'll tap, 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 tap. And they'll be just like, ah, okay. And then they can tell you what they have it for. Super Famicom, Mega Drive, PC Engine, nado, nado, nado. So on and so forth. Okay? So that's how you would say something like that. So what about if you've been looking for something but you can't find it and you want to ask if they have it? Let's take Aladdin as an example. So you can say, Aladdin o mitsukemasen deshita. Kore ga arimasu ka? Aladdin o mitsukemasen deshita. Kore ga arimasu ka? I couldn't find Aladdin. Do you have it? So that's how you can say that. And again, you can narrow it down a bit more. Super Famicom no Aladdin o mitsukemasen deshita. Kore ga arimasu ka? Aladdin... もう一度 Super Famicom no Aladdin o mitsukemasen deshita. Kore ga arimasu ka? Okay, so I've been looking for Aladdin for the Super Famicom, but I can't find it. Do you have it? Okay, so that's how you will say that. In fact, actually, it literally means I couldn't find Aladdin for the Super Famicom. Do you have it? It doesn't mean I've been looking for it, okay? We're going to get onto that in just a moment. So, you want to say, I'm looking for something. Do you have it? I'm looking for something. Do you have it? So let's take Aladdin again as our example. Aladdin o sagashite masu. Kore ga arimasu ka? Aladdin o sagashite masu. Kore ga arimasu ka? So I'm looking for Aladdin. Do you have it? And again, you can narrow it down. Super Famicom no Aladdin o sagashite masu. Kore ga arimasu ka? Super Famicom no Aladdin o sagashite masu. Kore ga arimasu ka? Okay, so I'm looking for Aladdin for the Super Famicom. Do you have it? And that's a really good way to, sort of help you find something. Oh, just very quickly, I want to mention that when it comes to the answers that you'll get to these questions, I will be producing a video which gives you a range of the kind of answers that you may hear from shop staff. So don't worry, that possibly is the most difficult bit, because you might get a whole load of Japanese and you're like, oh, what did they say? But I'm going to give you the keywords to listen out for various answers to the kind of phrases that we'll be learning through this set of videos. So don't worry, the kind of answers and words that you'll hear as replies will be coming in a separate video, so don't worry about that. And likewise, if you're looking for a system, you can just say something like, GameBoy o sagashite masu. Kore ga arimasu ka? I'm looking for a Game Boy. Do you have one? Okay, so that's your simple phrases. Please practice them. It's worth doing. If you're anything like me, you'll try cramming this about an hour or so before you're going to go out on a shopping trip like I did when I first came to Japan and forget it all. So my cheat sheet will help you here. There's no shame in checking that as you do it. You can even say something like, ちょっと待ってください. ちょっと待ってください. Please wait a moment. ちょっと確認をして. ちょっと確認をして. I just need to check. ちょっと確認をして. I just need to check. Okay? Anyway, that's some bonus phrases. So, I want to talk about another bargain that I found in Japan. So, remember I was talking about the Goju Onjun, the Japanese ordering system, a, I, u, e, o, okay? So sometimes you might be looking for a game and instead of using hiragana or katakana or indeed a name that's written in the Roman alphabet, it's going to be written in kanji. So what do? Well, you kind of have to know the kanji. But if you know the Goju Onjun system, you will know roughly where it's going to be located because it'll be under a or maybe ku or maybe it'll be under ro, for example. So this leads into my next bargain. I went travelling down to Miyazaki Prefecture down in Kyushu Islands, down in Japan's far southwest, and I was having a great time. And whilst I was there, I did many things, sightseeing, hiking, I took in some volcanoes, I took plenty of photos, enjoyed waterfalls, but I also, alongside skating, I did some retro game shopping. And I was in a city called Miyako Nojo, and they had a branch of Mansaido there, which is a really popular second-hand store here in Japan. Second-hand store is called a Chukoten, by the way, Chukoten. And whilst I was there, they didn't have an amazing selection, but they did have a display case. And I found a Super Famicom game that I've been looking for. And this is not like my most favourite Super Famicom game of all time, no. But it's definitely one that I wanted to find in box condition. So what game did I find? Well, I found Contra Spirits, otherwise known as Contra 3, the Alien Wars, or Super Probotector in Europe. Fantastic Konami run and gun, quite hard, I would say. Not as difficult as Hardcore on the Mega Drive. That one just, I've got no chance with that, I don't think. But this, I think, is very doable. I've not completed it yet, but I'm getting there. So, as you can see, it has the outer box, Soto Hako. It has the inner box, Naka Hako. It has the Game Softo or Kaseto. It also has the instructions, Setsumesho. It has the little leaflets inside of it, Shirashi. Okay, so it was complete. Now, on average, I see good condition Contra Spirits going for around about 12,000 yen here in Japan. Maybe a little bit less, but you're looking at about 12,000 yen. And as you can see, the box has no discolouring. It doesn't have scratches and tears. No kizu. Kizu ga arimasen. Kizu. No kizu. Okay? And it didn't say damagey. No damage. And it was true. Now I am going to go into the phrases about please can you show me what's the condition like in one of my next videos on this topic. But it all checked out. So what did I pay for this? 10,000 yen? Ichiman? Nope. Did I pay 8,000? Nope. Did I pay 5,000? Nope. I paid 2,200 yen. That is absolutely incredible. It remains one of the best bargains I've ever found. I can only assume that maybe it was a pricing error. It's almost as if it was missing the one. Like it should have been 12,200. But no, 2,200 yen. What an absolute bargain for such a quality game. And on the note of that Goju Onjun system, now it is actually written Contra here, so you would see that. If it was on a shelf, you would see Contra. If you saw the cartridge, it would have Contra on it. But you'll see here that Contra is written in katakana below, so you've got Contra, Contra, okay? But it's also written in the ateji, the kanji representation of the name. Ateji is basically kanji that is used just to give the reading, okay? It doesn't really have a true meaning specifically. But it's written in kanji nonetheless. It's the Chinese characters, and so maybe you'll see a game that just looks like this, and you'll be just like, oh, what does that say? Well, it sometimes helps that they have furigana, okay, furigana, small katakana or hiragana written either above or below, and so you'll be able to read it. So when you're looking for this on the shelf, you know that you want to be looking in ko, because that's how Contra is written. So it starts with ko, okay, not a C, ko, because obviously C as such doesn't exist in Japanese. So, so that's how understanding the Goju Onjun system will help you when locating games. So there it is. I hope that was interesting. As I say, the hint sheet is available on Patreon if you want to subscribe on there from $2 a month, or you can do a one-off donation on Coffee. All the links are in the description. If you have any questions, Patreon or Coffee donor or not, throw them down below. I'll be more than happy to help you out. I'm not saying that everything I've given you today is perfect, 100% kanpiki Nihongo, but I am fairly certain that with my experience of never having a problem using these kind of phrases, and with a bit of practice, you too can be understood and actually level up your Japanese shopping experience when you come here. I hope it's been helpful. Throw those questions down below. Give me any advice on how I've done something wrong as well. I'm quite happy to learn. But otherwise, I guess that all that remains for me to say is to see you soon. Peace!